Hi everybody, this is Linda Kay, and I am a learning specialist, board certified cognitive specialist as well from ADDvantages Learning, and I want to talk to you today about nonverbal learning disorders. I am very passionate about this topic because I myself have a nonverbal learning disorder. So I'm in the unique position not only that I completely understand this from my personal experience, but also have the educational and professional background to help others. So one of the things I first want to go over is to define what is a nonverbal learning disorder. Well, if you check out ADDitude magazine, I just wrote an article for them about the differences of NVLD with ADHD. Although we're not really going to talk about those differences today, you can check out that article. And that's with ADDitude magazine. But a nonverbal learning disorder is really, the person is very literal. Everything you say, they take the word exactly for what you say, not really reading in between the lines to get the higher level meaning. So kids and adults with NVLD may come across as rude and blunt because they are very verbally expressive, more so than the average person, because they're using words to navigate and understand their world. Words is everything, because approximately 90% of communication is nonverbal. They're not picking that up. They're only getting the remaining percentage of, 100 to out of 100%, the remaining 20% or whatever. We don't know the exact amount, but in generally, they're only picking up the verbal words that you say. So they're not picking up on the body language, the tone of voice, which changes the meaning of everything. Typically have very poor visual spatial skills, not knowing where their body is in space, bumping into things, getting lost easily, just not really knowing, having a visual sense of how processing. It's not that they can't see, it's just that the brain is not processing what they are seeing in a way where they can navigate everything like those without these deficiencies. So let me give you an example. I was just reading somewhere a kid has a nonverbal learning disorder, and he's very anxious and scared. Fear and anxiety are one of the top difficulties with NVLD, because when you don't really understand what's going on around you and how to navigate yourself, there's a lot of fear. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But there was a kid that was very afraid. Mom, am I going to have enough water? Am I going to have enough water? And I forget what book I was reading this out of, so I can't credit the person. But, and she assured him, yes, you're going to have bottled water. I put it in your book bag every day. And finally, he said one day, but Mom, it says spring water on it. What am I going to drink in the fall? So that's an example of someone being very literal. Doesn't mean that they don't have average or above average intelligence. It's just the processing. So those with NVLD do have average to above average intelligence. And that's why it's so tricky to identify it, because it's really nothing that can be seen by the visible eye, as if somebody were in a wheelchair. We would automatically understand their difficulty. So getting the right kind of help. And I also wanted to mention that math is usually a problem. Learning academics, such as math. Math is very visual, and that's part of the problem because they have the visual spatial processing difficulties. Usually very early readers, very well read. In fact, you may think that your child is a genius. They're reading novels by 5. But again, there's all these other difficulties that can't be seen. So you want to get help, obviously, but unfortunately what happens is when you go to get help, it's the wrong kind of help. And that's because most people, professionals, have no idea what a nonverbal learning disorder is at all. They're not trained in it. And usually the first person that you reach out to is, if it's anger, anxiety, depression, those are a byproduct of coping with NVLD. They're going to work on you with those things, but they're not really going to understand why you're experiencing the depression or anger or isolation, because they're not trained in learning disabilities, let alone nonverbal learning disabilities. And it's also not in the DSM. There is no formal diagnosis of NVLD like there is with ADHD, autism, where we can put a label on it. We know what it is, and it's diagnosed, and we know what the proper help is. We just don't have that yet, although the Nonverbal Learning Disorder Project is working hard on that. So that makes it even more complicated. So some of the things that I have seen over the years with adults and kids, I had one woman that was seeing a therapist and was just devastated that she didn't have any friends and that she had nothing to do on the weekends and she was alone. And so the therapist simply told her to solve this social problem was just to go out and buy a dress and make herself feel better. Well, that's not going to solve the problem, and that doesn't even begin to understand the emotional devastation inside when you are unable to make and keep friends, because that is a huge problem with NVLD, because you cannot communicate with other people and pick up on all these subtle body language cues, eye contact, facial expressions, tone of voice. So again, can you imagine somebody going to get help and being told that and then just walking away and feeling so misunderstood? Or a teacher may say, you know, I just told you how to do that. I explained it 3 times. Again, I'm not bashing teachers. I'm a former special education teacher. But if teachers don't know about a nonverbal learning disorder, then they're not going to get that somebody may need repetition and more explicit explanation, more importantly, more talking in literal terms so that the person can learn. I had another person tell me that, you know, when they went to this doctor, that the doctor would get very annoyed because, you know, people with NVLD ask a lot of questions. My father used to ask me, you know, if I was writing a book or I would be a great detective. Because we ask a lot of questions because we don't really get what's going on. And when people are asked questions, they kind of feel like they're being challenged. So this doctor would get very annoyed because the person really didn't understand what was going on medically and was asking a lot of questions, and the doctor felt like he had already said that but wasn't really explaining it so this person could get it with a nonverbal learning disorder. So what I want to say is that when you don't get the right kind of help, it does damage. You're totally misunderstood, kind of like your feelings are swept under the carpet, your difficulties, and you're kind of made to feel like, you know, just get on with it, with some of the examples that I gave you. So the other thing about treatment is there is no standard treatment. Everyone with NVLD presents a different way. So what works for one person isn't going to work for another person because their difficulties may be more in one area or less in another area than another person. One of the neuropsychologists that I have worked with has told me nobody ever fits this exactly. So again, it's really hard because if somebody is socially isolating, and the therapist is working with somebody on that, but they don't know the reason why, that's going to really affect getting this person the right kind of help, because being diagnosed and being educated about the diagnosis is the #1 thing that's going to help the person with NVLD improve. They have to be understood, and others have to know how to help them. And right now we don't have that because, again, it's not a classified disorder. So getting the right diagnosis can be difficult. You know, getting the right kind of help, as I said, is #1 is being understood. You are going to need a social interpreter, whether you're an adult or child, someone to teach you the ropes of different situations and that it's okay to do this in one situation but not in another. Because I've had kids think that it was okay to, you know, hug somebody and that they really don't know because they hug their aunt or their uncle. Okay, so they don't really understand what situations things are appropriate in and how they vary. So it takes a lot of social emotional learning. It takes parents, you know, sending your kid to a social skills group once a week is not going to do it. It's ongoing talking to your child, or it could be your spouse, every day, and really talking to them as if they speak a different language and really breaking everything down and explaining it to them so that they can begin to learn and be much more independent and start to understand social interactions. But they need kind of like a mentor or a guide or an interpreter, somebody that's going to be there that they can go to all the time, because if not, they're going to have a lot of anxiety. And that's when you see kids and adults going in and they're being treated for anxiety. Could be medication, maybe they're learning, mindfulness. Not that those things aren't good, but they're not going to get to the root of the problem of how to reduce the anxiety if they don't learn how to interpret, manage themselves socially, and also some things called executive functioning, which are processing skills, which I'll talk about that on my next video. So I can help in so many ways. If you're looking for help for yourself or your child, contact me. My number is 856-745-2141. You can text me, you can call me. It's my mission in life so that other people do not suffer what I have gone through, and what lots of other people are going through that don't even know the reason why, or children that don't even know, or parents that don't know the reasons why. I can help you. I've been there. And I can also refer you to other professionals that can help you. My number is 856-745-2141. And I really look forward to hearing from you. And I hope that this has helped you. Bye for now.